Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Candidate Forum for Issaquah Mayor and City Council. This event is presented by the Kiwanis Club of Issaquah, the Issaquah branch of the American Association of University Women, and the Issaquah Cable TV Commission. I'm Connie Fletcher, and I'll moderate this forum with Anne Francis Owen. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll hear from 5 candidates running for mayor and city council. This year, we have 3 candidates running unopposed: Mary Lou Pauly for mayor, Chris Ray for position 1 on the council, and Barbara Michele for position 3 on the council. We also have 2 candidates, Rose Zibrat and Russell Joe, running for position 5 on the council. Each candidate will start with a 2-minute statement, and then every opposed candidate will respond to questions. Those responses will last up to 90 seconds. Candidates will hear a single chime when they have 20 seconds left and 2 chimes when no time remains. After the first candidate responds, the opposing candidate will respond, and then the first candidate will have another 30 seconds for rebuttal. After 2 chimes, 2 chimes will indicate when the rebuttal time is over. Finally, each opposed candidate will have 1 minute for closing remarks. Before we start tonight, I'd like to thank Ann Crabtree, Tina Blondino, Kathy Friedman, Fred Butler, Jerry Tolsted, Lindsay Pinkston, and Tim Smith for suggesting questions and otherwise helping us put this evening together. Let's start with opening statements. Going forward, we'll only use first names. So let's get started with Mary Lou, who will give the first opening statement, followed by Chris, Barbara, Rose, and Russell.
Connie, thank you very much. My name is Mary Lou. I am currently serving as the mayor of the city of Issaquah. And first, I would just like to thank AAUW, Kiwanis, and the city for making sure we can still do these forums during COVID. My history with the city is long. I have served as mayor for 1 term, 4 years, and served as a city council member for 4 before that. But I was also on the city's Issaquah Development Commission for 20 years. So I pretty much was in town for about 4 months when I put my hand up and started volunteering. I just love it here. Serving as mayor over the last 4 years has been very interesting. It is not exactly what I expected. I did not know that a worldwide pandemic would turn our lives and our worlds completely upside down. So I wanted to share just a few quick things about that. I want you to know that our community has responded well through the entire pandemic. We have been resilient. We have been compassionate. We are over 90% vaccinated. We are an example of a community that took this very, very seriously and reacted really well. As far as the city goes, we're financially stable right now. I made some very hard decisions last year, some cuts that we had to do, but we're in a good position, and we're going to be able to use the funds that come from the federal government for reinvestment, a Build Back Better approach, as opposed to having to refill reserves because we're not in a great position. So I was very happy to give that information to our city council this year. And I just want the community to know as well, we're doing fairly well. The council and myself worked very hard to make sure that residents that were in need, businesses that were in need, nonprofits were getting assistance during this time. And while everybody's not thriving, they are surviving and some are doing well. So we need to make a few more investments to make sure that we don't lose some of the wonderful services that we have in town, but it looks very good. I'm very excited to serve a 2nd term of 4 years with our city because I have been passionately advocating and working on growth, development, transportation challenges, and protecting our national environment since I moved here. And so I'm very excited to serve another 4 years. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And Chris, you're next, followed by Barbara.
Good evening. My name is Chris Ray, and I'm running for Issaquah City Council. Before I start, I'd like to thank the Issaquah chapter of the AAUW and the Issaquah Kiwanis for organizing and hosting this forum. It's been an honor for me to serve the citizens of Issaquah on the City Council for the last 4 years, and I have found my time to be educational, challenging, rewarding, at times frustrating, but always gratifying. The last 4 years has been significant in the evolution of Issaquah. There have been a few things that we did as a city that I'd like to call out. First was the acquisition of 46 acres of wooded hillside on the north side of Cougar Mountain. Together with our governmental and not-for-profit partners, we preserved this land for generations to come. I am proud of the way that the city responded to the COVID-19 crisis. We were in uncharted waters. We pivoted operations to respond to a public health crisis and financial uncertainty. And I'm also proud of the city's leadership in the region on managing growth, mobility, and environmental stewardship. Mostly, I am proud of the people I serve with. I have developed a deep respect for my fellow council mates, our mayor, and the dedicated city employees who work tirelessly every day to make this city a great place to live. Issaquah remains at a critical crossroads, and the decisions that we make today will have profound impact on our future and our quality of life. We must address regional mobility. We need to find a sustainable approach to development, affordable housing, and homelessness. And finally, we must create a city where everyone feels safe and has an opportunity to thrive. With your help, we can shape Issaquah today and into the future. Thank you.
Barb?
Thank you. I am Barb Michele, and I'm running for position number 3. In 2019, I was honored to be elected to the Issaquah City Council, filling out an unexpired 2-year term. Little did I or anyone else know the momentous changes that 2020 would bring. I too am proud of the council's 2020 achievements. We decisively slowed the city's financial freefall, supplied unprecedented levels of food and rent supports to suddenly unemployed residents, provided about $1.5 million in support for local businesses, and confronted the twin challenges of racial inequities and police reform. The council approved the creation of an environmental board and more recently, the creation of an equity board. Through these boards, our residents will be able to be engaged in developing policies that will shape our city in positive ways for decades to come. I am ready and eager to continue working with you to resolve the many challenges impacting our daily lives. Among them are affordable housing and the crisis of homelessness, finding transportation alternatives to congested streets, and strengthening our human services network. The long-term impacts of the COVID pandemic, which is still with us, will continue to influence our path forward. Recovery and reconciliation, healing our individual wounds, and strengthening community must form a backdrop to everything we do. I am committed to bringing an equity, diversity, and inclusion framework to every city activity, and also committed to preserving and enhancing our precious environmental heritage. I hope you'll trust me once again to represent you, and together we can keep alive the old Issaquah motto, a special place where people care. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Let's hear from Rose now, followed by Russell.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Rose. I've lived in Issaquah for about 5 years, but I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My background is in geology and computer science, but despite my enthusiasm for rocks and computers, my true passion is in helping others. Over the past few years, I volunteered as a tutor at Monroe Correctional Complex, and before that, over at King County Libraries. I'm also a member of my local community emergency response team and a volunteer emergency worker for Issaquah. So I've always wanted to run for public office, and up until this year, I've just put it off for later. But back in May, I decided I can't put it off any longer. I strongly believe that we need more scientists and more women in government. So I am putting myself forward to being the change I want to see. I believe that public services are an investment into ourselves, our community, and our future. So I think we need to take into account how our decisions will affect our children several generations from now. We can't just consider the needs of the here and now. So my priorities include environmental protections, taking actions against the effects of climate change, which absolutely is possible at a local level, expanding access to public transportation, and addressing as many as I can the faces of social inequity. So, and these issues are all interconnected. There's a lot of overlapping solutions. But anyway, I think it's time we took on new perspectives to approaching these problems, and I want to just put myself forward there. So I think we deserve leaders that make data-driven decisions and write evidence-based policy. And if elected, I would bring with me my scientific approach to problem solving and passions for building a better community for everyone, for all residents. Thank you.
Russell?
Good evening. I'm Russell Joe, running for position number 5 in the City Council. My face may be familiar to you. I served on the council for 2 terms between 2000 and 2007. It was a pleasure and honor to serve the city, and I'm anxious to have the opportunity to try to serve the city again as we go forward here in 2021. I'd like to thank the AAUW, the Cable Commission, and Connie Fletcher for putting this forum together. I know that many of us are zoomed out or Zoom crazy or whatever you want to call it right now. And I know that people in the audience taking time out of their schedule to come and view this is also a great testament to the love that we have for our city. I've lived here for 26 years and I've seen many changes. I think if I were elected again, I'd like to focus on 3 main topics: transportation, growth, and public safety. I look forward to talking about those topics more in depth as we go into the question session for this forum. And I hope that everyone will get information that they need to make wise choices for the election in November. Thank you.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves to our audience. And would you start with the first questions?
Thank you, Connie. And welcome to Russell and Rose and Barb and Chris and Mary Lou. I'm going to dive right in with the first question, which is, one of the most important issues the council will face next year is updating the land use code. What should be included to address development and environmental preservation? We're going to alternate between who speaks first. For this one, I'd like Rose to speak, and then Russell, and then Rose will have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Alrighty, I'm up, huh?
Yep, you're up.
Alrighty. So we are living in a time with an unprecedented rate of biodiversity loss. And preserving the health of our environment and preventing the loss of biodiversity is of the utmost importance to protecting our own health. And focusing on rewriting the land use codes and also the construction codes will help us address preserving our environment and also taking actions against the effects of climate change. Specifically, what we should focus on, things such as updating the minimum installation rating required in new construction, requiring electric appliances rather than natural gas in new construction, because the Clean Energy Transportation Act would have Washington using 100% renewable energy sources for electric utilities by 2045. So if we could start implementing that now in new construction, we'll be ready for that renewable energy sources 100% by 2045. Things also such as using fire-resistant building materials in new construction. I'm sorry, is that the ding?
You have 20 more seconds.
Okay. And mandating defensible buffer zones where appropriate. But also we can build up urban forests. That's one of the cheapest and most simple ways to combat the effects of climate change. And what else?
Thanks, Rose. Russell, do you want to respond?
Thank you. Land use is always a balance between developing the land that we have and preserving the environment, our natural environment. I think that as we look to update our land use code, we should make sure that we take into consideration the most updated information that we have on the impacts from climate change. We should also take into account what our neighbors and fellow cities are doing to address the issues, taking their ideas as much as possible when they're appropriate for Issaquah to preserve our natural environment. We'd want to work with our partners to make sure that we were not doing something that was counter to our neighbors in Bellevue or our neighbors in Sammamish, but we were working in concert together to make sure that we're solving the issues. We can't, as Issaquah, just act alone on climate change and environmental issues as we look at the land use policy, but we need to work with our partners as we go forward. Finally, I think that we should always keep an eye on land use as a basic foundation for economic development. As we decide what kind of uses will be in a particular area. It helps determine what will develop in that area and how our city will grow and thrive. So keeping an eye on policies that are strict enough to make sure that we preserve things, but easy enough so that economic development can come in at a reasonable rate. Thank you.
Okay, Rose, you want another 30 seconds?
Sure. So I agree that we should be working together with our local cities and other forms of government, higher forms of government, because climate change and environmental protections are something that we all need to address, but we shouldn't just look to them and see what they're doing so that we can learn what we need to do. We should be pioneers in taking further action to make real feasible change.
Okay. So the next question is, we're going to start with Russell and then go to Rose and then Russell up 30-second rebuttal. The question is, what strategies do you support for promoting affordable housing in Issaquah?
Thank you for that question. There are two main bills that were considered at the last session on affordable housing that are important for us to continue to work with. Senate Bill 5287 was the multifamily tax exemption legislation, and House Bill, excuse me for a second, House Bill 1277 was the bill in the legislature that was concerned with the Housing Trust Fund. Both of those bills need support as we go forward to make sure that we have moderate income family housing under 1277, and that we have a multifamily tax exemption under 5287 to help facilitate the opportunity for us to have more multifamily housing and affordable housing in the city of Issaquah. Also, we need to look at the ability to do what's called build out our areas a little bit more in terms of density, so that if there are opportunities to have two houses on a lot and it's appropriate and fits the land use code, we can increase that density and maybe put an affordable house on a property that wasn't being used to its highest use before. Thank you.
Rose, you're up.
Alrighty. So yeah, I think probably the best thing we can do is up our inclusionary zoning, where we have a higher percentage of units that are dedicated to low income and affordable housing. Wages have been stagnating for decades as of 2018, and I'm not sure this has gotten any better since. Nearly 2 out of 3 renters nationwide say they can't afford to buy a home, and we have 40% of Issaquah, the units are rentals. And with house prices growing faster than wages in most US markets, including our area, they're not going to be able to afford a home, especially here in Issaquah, anytime soon. So also another big thing that's been going on for a while now, but more so even this year, it's been up, is corporations have been buying up residential properties at increasing frequency. So we need affordable housing more than we need more luxury homes here in Issaquah. And we need to prevent corporate or foreign or other wealthy investors from buying up residential homes to make a profit on, because housing is a human right. We know nobody deserves to be living on the street or being exploited for a basic need.
Okay, Russell, would you like 30 seconds?
Thank you. The other side to affordable housing is we want to make sure that our housing is affordable for our seniors in our communities. One of the ways we can do that is through accessory dwelling units. On many properties, you can put a second unit on that property so that grandma or your mother-in-law can live on your property and stay in the community. And that could be another way that we could keep Issaquah affordable. Thank you.
Thank you both for those answers. The next question, third question, what are your strategies for mitigating climate change and reducing its effects on the community? Rose, would you like to start?
Alrighty. So I already covered a couple. I was actually getting to building up our urban forest, being one of the cheapest and simplest ways to combat the effects of climate change. A higher tree canopy coverage will help mitigate the consequences of the urban heat island effect. But also, I think this overlaps with a few other things. It helps when you have tree coverage for the salmon. It helps them. It helps prevent warmer stormwater runoff into streams, which also helps out our salmon friends. But also, we need to. Sorry, let me start over. I think when it comes to addressing climate change and protecting our environment, we need to take a whole systems approach to these problems, because there are multiple issues that overlap, and we need to consider how each of those individual parts will function into the whole. So I'll just cut it there because I know I'm not going to finish in the 20 seconds I have left. Thank you.
Russell?
Thank you for the question. I think Rose hit on one of the most important things to do, and that would be to work with our partners on the issue. Issaquah itself can't necessarily make a big dent in the climate change issue, but working with our neighbors in King County, our upstream neighbor for Issaquah Creek, we hopefully can make a difference in the climate change in our own city. Rose touched on urban forests. That's a fantastic idea. I also think that working with our park system to continue to keep the canopy that's there, and then plant other plants in the parks has been a fantastic partnership with Mountain to Sounds Greenway. The project that comes to mind for me is Confluence Park. It started as a park that had bare stream beds, but over time, plants have been put in there by Mountain to Sound Greenway volunteers. And it's a nice park with good plants that will mitigate the stream, the flow to the stream during a rain event, and also act as a natural filter to keep that stream clean. Also, the Issaquah Alps does a great job with our trails. We need to make sure that those trails are properly maintained so they don't promote runoff that puts silt into the streams or degrades the hillside. Now, those are some of the things that we can do as a city, but we also, as I said at the very beginning, need to work with our partners in Sammamish above us and King County upstream from us and Bellevue as we look at climate change and mitigating its impacts. Thank you.
Rose, would you like 30 more seconds on climate change?
Sure. So about the whole systems approach, this would be like implementing permaculture practices, which is just a style of land management which seeks to emulate a thriving natural ecosystem, but we do it at a citywide scale. So I'd like to see the rewilding of public spaces that are purely ornamental, which serve no purpose beyond aesthetics. So I'd like to see more rain gardens and native plants that can survive the long summer months without rain. More intelligently planned development in architecture so that our community is more resilient as a whole.
Okay, thank you both for that. Question 4. Mental health and substance abuse issues have intensified during the pandemic. How would you prioritize behavioral and mental health resources? Russell, would you like to start on this?
Thank you. Each year, the city of Issaquah goes through a process to look at the organizations and nonprofits that we are going to support for our granting of funds. And in this next cycle, when I have a chance to take a look at that list, I will prioritize the mental health issues and substance abuse issues along the way as we go forward. I have 2 kids that are still doing remote learning. I see some of the impacts that they have from not being able to socialize with their peers. And I also see people through my job that are stuck on Zoom and have the stresses of having meeting after meeting back to back during their days. The stress is real. We need to be open to helping our community and helping our community members out as we go forward. One of the things that I've also done is worked with the Teen Garage, the Teen Garage over by the rec center. They do a wonderful job with a case manager and a counselor that goes in there and helps people from the high school, students from the high school, on their issues. Thank you.
Rose, would you like to start?
Sure. So, yeah, I love what the Issaquah Human Services Department is doing, and I'd love to see that department grow a little more so that people can find the services that they need. But really beyond that, I think that mental health decline we've seen is not an Issaquah specific problem. It's a nationwide problem. So allocating funds, you know, we're the Band-Aid because we're not addressing the root cause of the mental health decline. That probably needs to be patched from a higher level of government, but we definitely need to support the citizens here in Issaquah with what we can and what we have in the meantime.
Russell, would you like 30 seconds?
Thank you. Another thing that I've been working on is through my Rotary Club here in Issaquah. I'm part of the community granting committee, and we've been working on supporting Influence of Choice, which helps do videos for high school students to help them make smart choices about substance abuse. Those small projects can all come together and help our city be more healthy and address the mental health issues if we just pay attention to it and keep after the right solutions. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. This question is about civic engagement. The question is, how should the council recruit and make it possible for residents of all income levels to participate in civic activities such as commissions, particularly those that address their own needs, and how can we help them feel welcome? Rose, would you like to start?
Okay. How can we, I guess getting the word out would be a great first step because there's a lot of programs and whatnot in Issaquah that I had no idea existed until I went speaking to other people and they happened to mention in passing. So I would like to see more of an outreach in creative ways for people to come across these boards and programs and so forth. So maybe a budget towards mailers or signs outside. I think that was the question. The answers most of it. There was many parts to it, sorry.
Can you say it again?
Yes.
Okay. How should the council recruit and make it possible for residents of all income levels to participate in civic activities such as commissions, particularly those that address their own needs? And how can we make them feel welcome on those commissions, in those activities?
Okay, yeah, I think I mostly covered that then yeah, I think access, finding those programs and getting them through, drawing them in is probably the most important step. But.
All right, thank you. Russell, would you like to respond?
Yes. As part of my job, I'm a government affairs and public outreach specialist. And one of the things that I did over the summer was put together a program for education and outreach to the young school age students so they could find out more about good recycling practices. And we just didn't set up a table in front of the city hall. We went to where the kids were and where the parents were in terms of the fairs and the festivals and the farmers markets. We went to where they were comfortable in their community and willing to learn and find out new things. That same approach needs to be taken as we think about civic engagement in our communities. So if we are providing services through a board or commission to a particular segment of that population, we also should do some outreach to that population and say, hey, you have a stake in what happens in this particular area. You have some skin in the game, and you can be helpful by coming on to a board or commission to help influence the policy, to help influence what the city council ultimately decides. that education piece to meet them where they are and then invite them in can help us get more activity and more people that are interested in coming onto boards and committees. Now, Zoom has been a great thing for some of the meetings that we've had, and if people either are elderly or older and don't want to leave the house, we can perhaps do Zoom meetings or a hybrid meeting where they can still participate and be part of that committee, but still be in their homes. Now, if they don't have a computer, maybe we can work with a nonprofit that I have seen in the past. They take iPads, donate iPads, and help elderly people or retired people, people that are disabled, still have that access to those meetings and that civic engagement. Now, let's check to see if we could do that with some of the people that we're recruiting for our committees to get them more involved as well. Thank you.
Rose, you can have another 30 seconds if you want it.
I don't really have much to add, but I just would like to, again, agree that we need to put more of an effort to getting the word out and meeting people where they are.
Great. Okay. Next question. Russell will start first, then Rose, then Russell for a rebuttal. How would you start to plan for light rail in Issaquah? And in the meantime, what else would you propose to improve mobility and alleviate traffic congestion?
So one of the first things that I would do is try to bring people together to start thinking about 2040, when the terminus for light rail will be coming to Issaquah. I know it seems a long way off, but we need to start finding what our community vision is for that particular terminus. So we could have, for instance, retail on the first floor and housing on the second floor, right close to the light rail, so people don't even need a car. We need to think about electric charging stations there, so that people that are coming from the North Bends and the Snoqualmies and the Hobart area can come in, charge their cars, still feel comfortable that they will have enough charge to get back to their home at night, but still take advantage of going into the work centers in Bellevue and Seattle for that light rail opportunity. Now, as we think about mobility right now in town, I do like the fact that we have a local bus that's going through, that's taking people within the city back and forth. I think that one of the things that we neglect when we look at transportation projects is the big roads, I-90, 900. We need to focus on mobility within the city by perhaps working on another crossover over I-90 so that people can get around, and better bike trails along the way so that people will feel comfortable getting on their bike and going from place to place without having to get into a car. Thank you.
Rose, you have 90 seconds.
Alrighty. So I already mentioned that increasing access to existing public transportation is one of my main talking points, but the reason why is, well, it started with my own experience and going down to the Issaquah Transit Center to take the bus into work and finding that there's no parking. You can't take the bus even if you want to sometimes. But what would alleviate that is if we had some sort of shuttle service to the transit center. If we had, again, if we boosted our access to the public transportation that already exists, so we're going to have the same problem when the light rail gets here, that there won't be enough parking for people to get there. We need to be able to get people to the light rail without having them drive there. So there are three main benefits from getting more access to existing public transportation. Is one, reducing the traffic congestion that everyone is very concerned about. If we get more people taking public transit, we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And also having everyone being able to travel to their workplaces or essential services without having to rely on personal vehicles is just a great step forward for one small aspect of social equity. But we also need to give priority to.
Russell, you've got 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think that one of the other things that is not thought about very often is the other end of the bus transportation link when you're coming from Seattle. When I first started to work in Seattle in 1995. At the end of the day, there would be 4 or 5 buses all going to Issaquah at the same time within about a block of each other, just because of the way that the traffic blocked up things. I'd promote lengthening that schedule out and having buses a little bit later so it is more convenient for people to go into Seattle and take the bus home at night. They'll know that there's a wider array of opportunities and ways that they can get home as the schedule is lengthened out. Thank you.
All right, and that is it for the questions for tonight. Connie? Connie, hello? I'm gonna take over for just a second. And so at this point, Russell and Rose, could you please give your 1-minute closing statement? Rose made her opening statement first, so we'll start with Russell.
I'd like to congratulate Rose on putting herself out for this campaign. It is very tough to step up and say, I want to serve. I would like to have an opportunity to help Issaquah with its big challenges coming forward in the next 4 years. I believe that my knowledge as a nonprofit professional, as a government affairs and public outreach professional will help Issaquah do the outreach it needs to work with its partners to handle its biggest issues. I've been endorsed by House Member Bill Ramos, former Mayor Fred Butler, Council Member Barb Michele, and other mayors and council members in the area. I hope I can count on your support in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Rose?
Thanks. Thank you, Russell. So I would just like to reiterate that, I believe that public services are an investment into ourselves. Those are my values. If your values overlap in some regard, I would ask for your vote so that we can make Issaquah a better place to live for everyone. I take a scientific, methodical approach to all problems. I consider it my most basic responsibility to become the expert of a problem, to gather all relevant data before considering any solution. So I would just ask you again to please consider me for your vote. Also, if we're throwing in endorsements, I'm endorsed by the 41st Legislative District of Democrats, the 5th Legislative District, King County Democrats, and Fair Vote, Washington. Thank you all for coming out and listening to us ramble for 45 minutes. I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, candidates, for participating in the event and for being willing to help our community by providing your services to them. The Issaquah Cable TV Commission has recorded tonight's forum and will post it on the YouTube channel for the City of Issaquah. We'd like to thank everyone who watched this event live, and we ask you to please tell your friends that they can watch at their convenience and become more informed voters for November 2nd. Good night, everyone.